Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Let's talk about a phenomenon that I call coming down off the mountain. I've written about this before, but I don't know if I've ever made a video, so I'm going to make a video talking about my experiences. Before I jump into things, this is not intended to disparage or attack any particular belief system or religion. I will talk about religion because that's part of the experience, but this is not a polemic, so please don't take it that way. This is a term that I didn't make up, but I remember it being used about 30 years ago to describe something that would happen following these revivals, these religious revivals that would happen at church camp. The church camps really are kind of in the tradition of American religious revival. So when I lived back in California, about twice a year, everyone from the church, and I was raised in the evangelical stream, I call it the evangelical stream, which is a bunch of different denominations that are all kind of flowing in the same direction and doing a lot of the same things as far as the way they format their church and the way that they approach what they're doing, and as well as a lot of their belief systems. But it's more a mode of action. And so one of the things that they would do is they would send all the kids to these church camps about twice a year. You might have one in the winter that would be over like a weekend, and then you'd have like a week-long summer camp. And because we lived in Central California, all of these camps happened up in the Sierra Nevada mountains. So coming down off the mountain was literal in this sense, but it's figurative in the other ways that I've observed it outside of purely the religious space. But what would happen is kids would go up to these church camps, and it would be a week of summer camp. Now, they're kind of billed as summer camps, but they're really religious revivals, as I said. You would wake up in the morning and there would be breakfast and then like a morning worship service. And then there would be structured activities that were built around Bible stuff a lot. And then there would be an evening worship service. And then you would have these like devotionals with your camp counselors and things like that. So the majority of the time that you spent awake was not free time. It wasn't doing the activities that you would think of with like, salute your shorts kind of summer camp kind of stuff that you might have seen from 1980s movies or something. This was a intensive religious experience. That's what it was intended to be. It might have been billed as a summer camp, but it really was an intensive religious experience. And by the way, me and all my friends, we always found it disappointing how little time we had to have fun at this at all of these camps, because there was so much focus on an hour or more of worship in the morning and the evening, and there would always be a message that went along with that, and you'd have a special speaker that would come and do that for a whole week. And invariably this week-long experience would end with an altar call of some kind. Now, if you're not familiar with what an altar call is, if you're not Baptist or you've never been to a Baptist church, or you're not in the evangelical stream, is basically a pastor or whoever's leading in that area will call for people to come down and make some public commitment to Christ. What they'd say, like committing to Christ, or in these camps, there would be a recommit your life to Christ. So this would just basically take the place of a baptism, if you want to think about it outside of, outside of radical Reformation theology and thinking. This would be like a moment of conversion is what they're calling you down to do. So that's what they call the altar call. It's a part of a lot of Baptist stuff. It happens like every week. But this is what would happen at the end of the week. They call people down to do that. And I would never go down because I was raised in the church and I always believed this stuff, and I didn't feel any compulsion to go down and make a public display of recommitting my life to Christ or anything like that. But something I noticed, because I'm one of those observer types, is that you'd have the same people go down to that altar call every year, maybe twice a year, because they do a winter camp. The winter camp, we were always like, oh, we're going to get to snowboard, and don't really get to do that, or even have a snowball fight most of the time, because these camps weren't high enough in the Sierras to have a ton of snow. That's a totally different story. But Anyway, it would always end with this. And so the kids, after spending a week in this religious revival atmosphere where everything's really emotional, everything's about this one idea and this one subject, and there's all this pressure on the kids to act the part out, to sing during worship services, to and to finally do this altar call, that they would get really kind of high. They'd be in this emotional high where they really believed that their life was going to be transformed. Now, most of these were church kids, so there wasn't a whole lot of transformation to do. It's not like somebody gave up organized crime or something. Right? The worst thing these kids do is maybe lie about eating their vegetables. Most of them, right? But there was some kids who maybe they smoked some pot or something and they felt bad about it. And so it was time to do a recommit your life to Christ kind of thing, which they would do pretty much every year. And then you come down off the mountain. In this case, it'd be literal. You would drive down off this mountain and you get back down to the valley floor. Or if you were from the coast, you'd be driving back over to San Luis or wherever. And you'd return to the real world. And when you return to the real world where you're not completely surrounded with all of these emotional experiences, and music is a very emotional experience. Now, the worship music is not an emotional experience for me, but for other people around me, it was a really emotional experience. Once you withdraw all that, once you are out of the environment where every day is beginning with Bible reading and contemporary Christian worship music and activities about the Bible and then devotionals, and once that is removed from your life, what do is you find that you're not as transformed as you thought you were during that moment of conversion, and you slip back into your old habits. And a lot of times it's even kids would get this. There's something that they want to do differently, right? They want to have different friends. They want to be nicer, or, they want to just be different somehow. They want to feel like God has a purpose for them and God wants them to do things, and they get back to the real world and that's just not there, right? There's no immediate call like God wants me to do something. It's like you're going to high school. You have no option to do something else, right? You're going to high school and that's what you're doing. And so that radical transformation, that moment of conversion, and this transformation that drives so many stories. And I thought about this because of some recent videos that I've made and a lot of conversations that I've had recently about this idea. Because in the evangelical stream, there's this intense focus on a conversion story, and the more dramatic, the better. If you go from being really awful to being really good, then it's like, boom, you're a true believer. And if you don't have that conversion experience, you're going to want to have it. And so that's where that altar call comes in. But you just fall back into your normal way of acting in your real life. You lose the purpose. You lose that sense that God is calling you to do something, because on Monday, you end up doing the same things you did on Friday, if it's like a winter camp or whatever. But, you get back to school in September and life is just exactly the way it was. You go to school, you go home, you play Nintendo 64 back then, and or whatever you're going to do, whatever your life is. You just fall back into that normal mode of being. And so I call it coming down off the mountain. You have this belief that your life is transformed and you're a new creature and everything's going to be better. And then once all of that atmosphere is removed, you're back down to the normal thing. And then there's this profound sense of disappointment in yourself, that you didn't take action, that you didn't find the next step to do something, to be something, to contribute something. People would invariably, after these sorts of things, decide that they needed to like learn guitar and be part of a worship band, or they needed to be a missionary when they grew up. And those things usually didn't pan out, because the real life put its own pressures on them. And once they were removed from that emotional area, it just wasn't there. Now I see this, I remember this, and I remember this term coming down off the mountain. I want to say, some maybe youth leader used it. It's like, what do we do with kids after they come down off the mountain? And it's like, well, the truth is your life can't resemble that intensity of the camp. It can't. Right? We have a real life, so you can have some things, right? You can develop a prayer schedule, or commit to devotionals or something like that. But it can't be this thing where you're doing, 2 days I mean, like 2 hours a day of worship, and it's all about the Bible and it's all about God. It's just not realistic for most people. Church gets put into one place among many other things that are going on in their lives. But I saw this with a friend of mine who did this sort of life coaching thing. Not that he was the life coach, but he did this like life coaching course. And I'm trying to remember what it was called. It's called like Choice Centers or something like that. And it was basically a revival, a religious revival, but secular. I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but the religious feelings that were there, that this is going to change you, that you're going to do these, you're going to get out of your comfort zone, and you're going to learn to realize your full potential, and you're going to transform into this amazing person who could do all of these amazing things. And like we got through it. They even had like this graduation where everybody stood up, and my friend's like, "Oh, is this something that you want to do?" I'm like, "There's no way I'm doing that." And he's like, he was kind of thrown for a loop for why I would want to do it. I'm like, because like this isn't going to create any lasting change. I learned at this point, and I have this in my book, like Keys to Prolific Creativity. I'm not sure where it is, but anyway, you should check it out. It's like $3, or you can get it on the Patreon link down below. Habituation is what creates real change. If you want to change your life, you have to habituate the thing that you want to change. So, if you want to exercise, you just have to habituate exercise. It's not, you're not going to become an endurance athlete tomorrow. You just have to exercise. That's like the main thing. And then where you take it as you develop that habit is really up to you. And it's the same thing with learning an instrument, learning how to write, any of these sorts of things. It's all about how you habituate it. And so I knew that however you feel about it at the end, that's not going to convert into a profound change. And that's exactly what happened. Is after the camp, this friend of mine, he came down off the mountain. He went back to his normal job. He went back to his normal life. He was excited about things changing, but they didn't really change until basically he was forced to change, right? Till like life became upended and chaotic and everything had to change. And that's really what, those sort of traumatic events where like you have a big breakup and you have to move away, or like you lose a job. These things tend to create a lot of growth, post-traumatic growth. But just doing a revival that makes you feel those things, that doesn't convert into that, because you just go back to what you're doing before. And what you're doing before was habituated towards a thing that maybe you didn't want. Right? So when you come down off the mountain, if you want to keep that, you can't keep that feeling going. But if you want to actually make a change, then it has to be something that's habitual. And I learned that. And I learned that by like transforming my body at one point. I learned that by writing books and screenplays. I learned that by learning to be a concert guitarist. I learned it through all of these mini lessons over the course of my life that helped me to understand that the real change doesn't happen because of your frenzied emotional state, but because you have a consistency of action towards what your goal is. And if it's really consistent, then the goal will arrive through that consistency. It's not like, I have to do this goal. It's like you do the action, you do the habit, you do the process, and then the goal just sort of arrives to you. If you sit down and write every day, it's like, I want to write a book. Well, just sit down and write every day. Write 500 words, write 1,000 words. And before you know it, you're writing the end on your story. And you're like, this goal just approached me. What did I do? Well, you just did one thing every day, and then it happened. And then how did that transform you? Well, you became a writer instead of a person who wants to be a writer. Instead of being an aspiring writer, you are a writer. So you are what you do repeatedly. But I see this in other things as well. People have these emotional frenzies. Maybe they go to a concert festival like the Burning Man or something, and they think they have this transformative experience because they took psychedelics or something like that. And they go back to their normal life, and that feeling melts away. It melts away because it was part of a frenzied emotional state and not what you end up doing every day. And real transformations are the things that you end up doing consistently. So that's what I wanted to talk about. So I call it coming down off the mountain. I think it can happen to anyone that gets really excited about something, but transforming that into real change involves doing the hard work of being consistent with whatever you're trying to do. So I would love to have your thoughts down below. Did you experience something similar? Like, did you go to one of these church camps? How did the church camps affect you? How did they affect other people? I would love to have more people kind of have input on this, rather than me just thinking on a personal sense. I've encountered other people that went to these church camps, including, family members and things like that that weren't from the area. But I would love to know, people outside of, maybe outside of California. What was it for you? Were the camps kind of in the wilderness? They were away from people. You're isolated away from your normal life, and you're isolated away from your family. And that's somewhat dangerous, right? There's a little bit of a danger to that. I'm recalling a video from a YouTuber where he talked about going to this Pentecostal church camp where they like starved the kids and stuff, trying to help them discover their spiritual gifts, and what a traumatic experience that was for them. I wouldn't say my church camp experience was traumatic. It was just, I wasn't affected by it, and it was clear that I was supposed to be affected by it more. But I'm not, I guess I'm just not as emotional a person as other people are. So I would love to have your thoughts on it, and, the hazards there or whatnot. Anyway, leave me your thoughts. Let me read them. Let me respond to them. And I will talk to you all next time. Have a great, great day.